Tell your critics this. Every stone they threw became a step I climb. Chosen ones, you called their bluff. Now they're reeling. My dear chosen ones, lean in. This is not courtesy, this is clarity. They thought the whispers would hollow you out. They thought a rumor could erase a record. They mistook your quiet for quit. But quiet was you sharpening the blade, and now the cut is clean. You did something right, and it's rattling every hand that tried to hold you still. You ask, why are they louder now? Because impact makes noise. When a locked door finally swings, the hinges complain. You ask, did I go too far? Number. You went far enough to leave their reach. They're shocked because you stopped playing tag in a maze they built and started walking straight lines through the walls. That's the power of being chosen. You don't beg for lanes, you become the road. Hear me, chosen ones. If your light irritates their eyes, that's not your problem, that's their adjustment. They hurled daggers dressed as jokes, hoping your spirit would leak out before the morning check-in. But the shield you carry wasn't bought. It was forged. Sleepless nights hammered it into shape. Patience stitched the seams. A will that doesn't bend sealed the edges. They weren't wrestling you, they were wrestling the pressure that made you. And pressure does not lose. Think of it like this. Storms are not sent to erase outlines, they scrub the glass. After the downpour, the world sees you without smudge. You didn't collapse, you constructed. You didn't hide, you hardened. You didn't stall, you studied. And study has a look, steady breaths, straight posture, eyes that take notes from every hit. That's why they're off balance. They were waiting for a meltdown. You delivered a blueprint. Silence is the loudest no a manipulator will ever hear. Remember that. Your stillness starved their appetite. Your refusal to react made their traps trip on themselves. They needed you swinging, you kept building. They needed your validation, you kept your voltage. Now they're shocked because the algorithm they gamed doesn't recognize someone powered from within. Energy salutes the self-fueled. My dear chosen ones, ask yourself the right questions. What did all those long nights buy me? Endurance. Why does the air feel thinner? Altitude. Why does my calm bother rooms that once ignored me? Because calm is a verdict. It says, I don't owe you a performance. And when a verdict is final, appeals turn into background static. Let them file paperwork in their heads. You are already past the courthouse. Picture it. They measured your coffin. You drafted your chair. They rehearsed your ending. You rewrote the scene. They pinned you to yesterday. You outgrew the frame. This is not revenge, it's revelation. The same heat that tried to scorch you became your lantern. You walk through flames like mist because you learned where the real burn lives, inside focus, not fire. And for anyone wondering, do I deserve this rise? Listen closely. You're not lucking into anything. You're aligning with everything you paid for. Every small habit was a deposit. Every boundary was interest. Every quiet win compounded. That's why the ground feels like it signs a lease with your footsteps now. You didn't find a shortcut. You cleared one. So stand up, chosen ones. Wear your silence like steel and your proof like daylight. If they keep watching, let them. Each step is a siren they can't unhear. No more second-guessing, no more shrinking to fit a room that can't hold your measurements. You did something right, exactly right, and their shock is just the echo of a door closing behind you. Keep walking, and to every single one of you, yes, you, my dear chosen ones, you are the reason this message carries weight. Your presence here proves you're not ordinary, because ordinary eyes can't even process this kind of truth. If you're ready to step deeper into your strength, to own the very moves that shocked them all, then smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments so this circle knows you're tuned in. And if you want to push this mission further, show some love through the super thanks. It means more than you know. Now let's break this down step by step. And believe me, if you're truly chosen, you'll feel it in your bones, because these signs don't land on just anyone. They only show up for the ones who already rattled the ground with their rise. Let's get started. Number 1. When the storm tried to erase you, it marked you instead. They whispered that you were breaking apart, but the ground shook because you were shifting it. Chosen ones, listen closely. The shock written across their faces isn't because you failed, it's because you moved in silence, and now the silence roared louder than their noise. They didn't expect you to keep breathing after the betrayals. They didn't expect you to keep building when doors slammed in your face. They thought you'd crawl into the dirt they tossed at you. But instead, you rose so tall that the dirt became the very soil your roots anchored into. That's what they're choking on right now, the realization that every hit they threw only tightened your grip on the ground beneath you. You see, they assumed your stillness was surrender. They read your quiet like weakness, but quiet has always been the language of transformation. Butterflies don't scream inside the cocoon. Volcanoes don't announce before eruption. You weren't frozen, you were recalibrating. And when you stepped back into the light, the impact cracked their illusions wide open. Doesn't it make sense now, chosen ones, why they can't look you in the eyes? Because when they do, they see the reflection of their own failed predictions staring back. Let's be honest, some of you wondered during those nights, why does it hurt this much? Why does it feel like everything is against me? That question haunted you, didn't it? But here's the truth. Pressure isn't a punishment. Pressure is the blueprint of the chosen. Diamonds don't glitter until they've been crushed. Steel doesn't bend into armor until it's been hammered by fire. And you, my dear chosen one, became unbreakable not because life spared you, but because it didn't. They wanted you cracked, but all they did was hand you blueprints. They mocked your pauses, not knowing pauses are where warriors sharpen their blades. They mistook silence for absence, not realizing silence was where you learned the rhythm of your own footsteps. When you walked back into the arena, you didn't come as a spectator. You came as the earthquake that split their fragile ground. And now they're scrambling, pretending they didn't notice. But they noticed. Oh, they noticed. Why are they so shocked, you might ask yourself? Because they counted you out while you were still counting stars. They forgot that chosen ones aren't fueled by applause, but by alignment with their own grit. They forgot that you don't need permission to rise. They forgot that you don't play on their scoreboard. You built your own game. And the cruelest blow to their pride is this. They can't take credit for what you've become, not a single ounce. My dear chosen ones, realize this. Your glow doesn't just light a path, it exposes shadows. That's why their discomfort is so loud. Your calm, your endurance, your refusal to break, it unsettles them because it reminds them of what they couldn't kill inside you, and now they're left with a reality they can't erase. You did something right. You carried the weight, you absorbed the blows, and instead of collapsing, you turned the whole battlefield into your blueprint. So, walk like the earthquake you are. Speak like the tremor that rattles their foundations. Don't shrink because they're stunned. Expand because they're stunned. They thought you'd be the ending to a sad story, but you turned into the plot twist they never saw coming. And every step you take now is proof that being chosen isn't about survival, it's about disruption. You didn't just outlast the storm, you became the storm. And that, chosen ones, is why they're shocked. Number 2. Silence isn't weakness, it's the sharpest weapon you carry. Nothing rattles an enemy more than the silence of someone they thought would scream. My dear chosen ones, let's get this straight. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. The world taught you that loudness equals strength, but you've proven the opposite. Your silence has been louder than any roar they could ever muster. And that, right there, is what shocked them. They were waiting for your breakdown, your explosion, your desperate reaction. But instead, you stood still. You didn't flinch. You didn't chase. You let your quiet be the echo that suffocated their noise. Think about it. Why does your silence disturb them so much? Because silence exposes. It leaves them alone with their own chaos, their own lies, their own shaky walls. They expected you to play defense in their messy arena, but you stayed rooted in calm. They hate it because calm is undefeated. When you don't react, they can't feed. And when they can't feed, their games starve. Chosen ones, remember? Silence doesn't mean you're doing nothing. It means you're doing everything they can't see. It means you're building in private, recovering in stealth, sharpening in the shadows. They thought you disappeared, but really you were preparing. Your silence was the incubator where your next level was forming. Now that you've stepped out, they can't process how you returned sharper, stronger, steadier. And here's the twist. They mistook your pause for surrender. They whispered, "See? They're done." But you weren't done. You were resetting the board. While they celebrated an illusion of victory, you were rearranging the whole game. Silence was your shield, your laboratory, your battlefield. That's why today your very presence slices through their noise like a blade. Chosen ones, you must understand, silence isn't an absence of power, it's a concentration of it. Like a storm gathering in the distance, still skies don't mean no weather. They mean impact is on the way. That's exactly why they're shocked now. They thought your silence meant the end of you, when in truth it was the beginning of their unraveling. So wear your silence proudly. Don't second-guess it. Don't let anyone label it weakness. It is your sharpest weapon, and the proof is already in their shaken faces. You did something right, and now they can't unhear the thunder inside your quiet. Number 3, they called it collapse. You called it construction. They laughed at the ashes, never realizing you were laying bricks. My dear chosen ones, hear me clearly. What they labeled as your downfall was nothing but their shallow interpretation of a process they could never survive. They stood at a distance, pointing fingers, whispering about your so-called collapse, and yet they had no clue you were busy drafting blueprints. They thought the silence around you was proof of defeat, when in reality it was the sound of foundations being poured. They mistook rubble for ruin, but rubble was the raw material you were turning into a fortress. Chosen ones, do you understand the beauty of this? They miscalculated you. They believed pain would scatter you, but you gathered every broken piece and turned it into armor. They called your pause a breakdown, not knowing it was a strategy. They confused your recalibration with retreat, not realizing you were sharpening edges they couldn't dull. They thought you were crumbling, but you were constructing an empire brick by brick. Think about it. Why are they shocked now? Because what they expected to bury you only built you higher. While they chronicled your pain like reporters waiting for the final chapter, you were writing blueprints in the margins. And now, when you stand firm, they choke on their own narratives. Their mistake was simple. They thought collapse was the end. But collapse, for the chosen ones, is construction, an upgrade in disguise. Maybe you've asked yourself, why did it have to hurt so much? Why did I have to lose so much? The answer is sharp, because weak structures can't hold chosen souls. The universe stripped away everything unstable, so your rebuild could rise without cracks. What looked like ruin was your preparation. Every sleepless night became mortar. Every tear watered cement. Every betrayal became reinforcement. And now, the very storms that were supposed to flatten you are trapped outside the walls you built from their debris. My chosen ones, let this sear into your spirit. Collapse is only fatal to the ordinary. To you, it's a construction zone. You didn't fall apart. You were being redesigned. And the shock on their faces right now, that's the proof. They didn't expect your ruins to roar back as a masterpiece. They thought you'd stay buried. Instead, you built a throne from the dirt they threw. Number 4, victory isn't coming. You're already walking in it. They thought your crown was still being forged, not realizing you've been wearing it in silence this whole time. My dear chosen ones, let me speak this plainly. You don't have to wait for victory. You're already living inside it. The problem is, those who doubted you can't process what's right in front of their eyes. They keep waiting for some grand announcement, a trumpet, a fireworks show that says, the chosen one has arrived. But you didn't need applause, banners, or lights. You kept moving while the world was silent, and the silence itself became your victory march. They are shocked because they mistook your stillness for weakness. They whispered that you were done, that you were broken, that you had no next step left in you. But chosen ones, let me ask you, wasn't your silence strategy? Wasn't that pause your way of sharpening the blade before you strike? Of course it was. They don't understand that chosen energy doesn't need spectacle. Victory for you isn't a destination. It's the very ground beneath your feet. Every breath you take after what they tried to bury you under is a win. Every sunrise you see after nights they swore would crush you is proof. Think of it this way. They were waiting for you to cross a finish line while you were already holding the trophy. They measured your battles in visible scars, but they missed the invisible grit that kept you standing. They laughed when you were quiet, but that quiet was a storm rehearsing its roar. They're shocked because their whole plan was to see you crawl, yet here you are walking like you own the air. And you do. Chosen ones, don't confuse their disbelief with your delay. The victory has already been sealed in your actions. Look back at every sleepless night, every tear you turned into fuel, every rejection that redirected you. You were winning then. You are winning now. The shock on their faces isn't about what's coming. It's about realizing they missed it while it was unfolding right under their noses. So walk boldly. Victory isn't ahead of you, it's inside you, stitched into your story, pulsing in every step. And that's exactly why they're trembling. You already did it, you already proved it, and you're already walking in it. Number 5, shattering old chains and rewriting the entire playbook. They chained you with yesterday, thinking rust would keep you still. But chosen ones don't drag chains, they melt them down and craft new keys. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about what happens when you decide you're done living inside the script they wrote for you. For too long, they thought they had your story pinned, boxed, labeled, filed under predictable. They banked on your pain being permanent, your silence being surrender, your setbacks being a final chapter. But what they didn't see coming was the moment you picked up every broken piece and forged something entirely new. You didn't just break the lock, they no longer even recognize the door. That's the power of being chosen. You don't just escape, you rewrite the entire playbook. Think about it. How many times did they replay your mistakes like highlight reels, hoping the echoes would keep you small? How often did they drag your name through yesterday's mud, convinced it would stick forever? But here's the twist. They underestimated the fire inside you. Chosen ones don't recycle old stories. We burn them down and draft chapters that stun even us. And that's why they're shocked. They stare because the version of you they gambled on no longer exists. They keep calling the number of someone who moved out of that old identity long ago. Now you might wonder, why do they look rattled every time you walk in the room? Because they're realizing their tricks don't work anymore. The chains they welded for you are scattered ashes now. You turned their weapons into lessons, their curses into fuel, their silence into your syllabus. They thought they buried you in rubble, but all they did was hand you raw material to build higher ground. And trust me, chosen ones, nothing terrifies them more than watching someone thrive with the very stones meant to crush them. So hear me clearly, you're not just free, you're dangerous to every system that tried to keep you caged. Your freedom is proof. Your pivot is evidence. Your calm is the verdict. They can't predict your moves anymore because you shredded their rulebook and authored your own. That's why the room tilts when you arrive, why the air feels different when you speak. You didn't just walk away from chains, you rewrote the game they swore you had to play. And that, my chosen ones, is exactly why they're shocked. Number 6. Patience, gratitude, and the grind that turned into gold. They thought your waiting meant weakness, but every second was a deposit in a vault they'll never touch. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the patience they mocked, the gratitude they called naive, and the grind they dismissed as wasted time. They saw you pause, but what they didn't understand is that your pause was power. They laughed when you didn't rush. They sneered when you didn't panic. But chosen ones know something they'll never grasp. Patience isn't sitting still. It's training in silence. It's growth with no applause. It's stacking strength behind the curtain until the stage can't contain you. Think back, chosen ones, to those nights when you whispered, "Why isn't it happening yet?" And the silence almost drove you mad. That wasn't delay. It was design. While they sprinted for shortcuts, you were building mileage. While they begged for quick praise, you built stamina. And now look, when their lungs burn at the first incline, you're still climbing, calm, steady, unstoppable. That's the gold hidden inside patience, the kind of endurance that can't be faked. And gratitude, that quiet thank you muttered to yourself in seasons of lack. It rewired you. It turned scraps into seeds. They threw dust on you, hoping to bury you, but your gratitude used that dust as fertilizer. You smiled at small wins, and those smiles became magnets for bigger victories. They can't understand why doors keep swinging open for you, chosen ones, but you know it's because you treated every step like treasure, even the ones they mocked as nothing. And the grind, the part nobody clapped for, the mornings you got up when your body screamed, "Stay down," the hours you worked while they slept, the invisible labor they said was pointless, that grind turned into gold. They thought they were watching you struggle, but you were minting a currency only the strong can spend. Every repetition, every stumble, every restart, that was gold dust collecting until you walked out shining. So let them choke on confusion. Let them wonder how patience, gratitude, and grind became your crown. You know the truth, chosen ones. You didn't just wait, you prepared. You didn't just thank, you transformed. You didn't just grind, you forged gold. And now they're shocked because they can't buy what you bled to build. Number 7. The crown isn't a promise, it's the proof you wear daily. They laughed at your scars because they didn't realize those were the jewels setting your crown. My dear chosen ones, listen closely, because this part is the sting they can't stand. They wanted to convince you that your crown was just a dream, some shiny promise that might come later, if ever. But here's the truth that unsettles them. You're not waiting on a crown. You're already wearing it. Every sleepless night you survived, every betrayal you turned into fuel, every tear that watered the seed of your persistence. Those moments weren't wasted. They hardened into metal. They carved into jewels. They shaped into proof. That crown isn't symbolic. It's literal in the way your presence shifts the room before you even speak. Think about it. Why do they choke when you enter the space? Why does silence follow you like a shadow? It isn't imagination, it's recognition. Deep down, even your enemies know the crown is real. They feel it before you even notice it's tilting on your head. And here's what rattles them most. They thought crowns were given, handed out like cheap prizes to whoever screamed the loudest. But yours was forged. No committee voted for it. No applause session validated it. You earned it in the dark, when nobody clapped and nobody cared. That's why it can't be stolen, can't be faked, can't be duplicated. Chosen ones, understand this. Your crown isn't about titles or compliments. It's not about someone else finally admitting you deserve respect. Your crown is the proof. Proof that survival wasn't for nothing. Proof that silence was strategy. Proof that your calm is louder than their chaos. And every day you wake up and choose to keep walking, that's another jewel added to it. They can gossip, they can plot, they can pretend you don't exist. But the weight of that crown makes their denial look laughable. And here's the question you've been asking. But why don't I feel like I'm wearing it yet? Because crowns aren't felt first. They're recognized first. Others see it before you do. But trust me, once you catch your reflection in the right mirror, you'll realize you've been carrying it all along. The shock on their faces. That's not confusion. That's confirmation. You did something right. Chosen one, and the crown you wear daily is living proof. Number 8. Chosen ones, your isolation was an invitation. They called it loneliness, but heaven called it alignment. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. That season when everything went quiet, when people vanished without explanation, when rooms that once buzzed with your name suddenly turned cold, none of that was random. You thought you were being abandoned, but you were being summoned. You thought the silence was rejection, but it was redirection. That isolation that pressed so heavy on your chest wasn't punishment. It was an invitation from destiny itself. You see, chosen ones, elevation never happens in crowds. God doesn't do group training for individual assignments. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey when the noise of the world has to fade so the instructions can finally come through clear. That's why the phone stopped ringing. That's why the tables you once served at suddenly flipped. That's why familiar faces turned unfamiliar overnight. It wasn't that you did something wrong, it's that your spirit started broadcasting on a frequency too high for casual connections. Isolation, for the chosen, is a sacred classroom. The walls you thought were closing in were actually protecting the blueprint. The people who walked away weren't your loss. They were the proof that you were shifting dimensions. Understand this. When divine promotion is underway, detachment comes first. You were never being left behind. You were being moved ahead. Quietly, strategically, intentionally. Chosen ones think back. During that season, your prayers changed, didn't they? The shallow words couldn't hold you anymore. You started talking to God differently, not from a place of performance, but from a place of hunger. That's what isolation does. It strips away the background noise so you can finally hear your own heartbeat again. And that heartbeat? It's your original rhythm. The one you lost trying to keep up with people who were never meant to walk your full journey. They called you distant. They said, "You've changed." Of course you did. You outgrew the conversations that led nowhere. You lost interest in battles that proved nothing. You stopped auditioning for rooms that couldn't afford your energy. That's not arrogance, chosen ones. That's awareness. Isolation taught you how to be comfortable in your own company, how to sit in silence and not crumble, how to find peace where others panic. But let's be real. Isolation hurt. There were nights you questioned your worth. There were mornings when the quiet felt unbearable. You scrolled through old messages that no longer made sense, replayed memories that now felt foreign. You wondered, why me? Why now? Yet beneath the ache, something was happening. Roots were going deeper. Vision was sharpening. Faith was being forged. The loneliness wasn't empty. It was pregnant with transformation. Remember this, chosen ones, every destiny requires distance. A seed cannot grow in the open. It must be buried first. You were buried, not to be forgotten, but to germinate. The soil pressed against you wasn't a grave. It was a womb. And when the right time came, you broke through the surface, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become. That's why they're shocked now. They thought isolation would crush you, but it crowned you instead. Let's talk about why isolation rattles people. Because when you withdraw, manipulators lose access. Energy leeches lose their supply. They can't control what they can't reach. Your absence forced them to face their own emptiness. You became the mirror they can't escape, because even in your silence, your growth exposes their stagnation. That's why they whisper, that's why they stare, that's why they try to pull you back into cycles you've already graduated from. Don't go back, chosen ones. Don't answer old calls from expired seasons. Hear me clearly. Isolation is where identities are refined. Before every public rise comes a private rebuild. David had the fields before the throne. Joseph had the prison before the palace. Jesus had the wilderness before the cross. So why do you think your isolation was any different? You were being refined for a platform that required privacy first. What felt like exile was actually the signing of your promotion papers. And now, as you stand on the other side, pay attention. Your discernment has changed. You can feel energy before words are spoken. You can sense motives without proof. That's what solitude gives you. Clarity no crowd can teach. You no longer chase company, you curate it. You no longer beg for belonging, you bless from a distance. You've learned that peace is the real prize, not popularity. So when they say you've become too quiet, smile. When they say you're always by yourself, nod. Because chosen ones know, quiet is where kings and queens are crowned. Solitude is where blueprints are downloaded. You don't need a committee to validate what was confirmed in your spirit. You only needed space to hear it. Think of it like this. Your isolation was the gate between chapters. You couldn't take the old cast into the new script. The people who left were necessary subtractions. The silence was the editor cutting the noise. What remained, your will, your faith, your fire, is the purified version of you. That's why you see clearer, move lighter, and sleep deeper now. And for anyone wondering, will this season ever end? It already has. The moment you stopped calling it punishment and started calling it preparation, isolation lost its sting. You graduated from needing company to being complete company. That's the secret the world can't grasp. Chosen ones are never truly alone. Heaven always fills the room. So walk boldly, chosen ones. The next time solitude calls, answer without fear. That's your invitation to ascend again. Isolation wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to introduce you to yourself and the self you met there. That's the version that will walk through every new door, calm, certain, and crowned. They thought the silence meant you disappeared. But chosen ones never disappear, they reappear, evolved. Number 9. Chosen ones, not everyone can breathe at your altitude. They admired your climb until the air grew thin. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about what happens when growth takes you somewhere the old air can't follow. Every new level carries its own atmosphere, and the oxygen that sustained you before begins to feel lighter. You didn't change because you wanted distance. You changed because your lungs adjusted to something higher. That's why the same conversations feel tight now, why familiar spaces suddenly feel small. Altitude demands new breathing. Chosen ones, not everyone can handle that air. Some will gasp, some will turn back, and some will resent the ease with which you keep moving. Don't mistake their struggle for your guilt. You trained for this. Those long nights of self-discipline, the quiet hours of work no one saw, those were your conditioning. While others stayed at comfort level, you built stamina for altitude. Elevation exposes the difference between attachment and alignment. The ones who were only connected to your lower stages will cough at your new rhythm. They'll tell you you've changed, and they'll mean it as a wound. But listen carefully. You were supposed to. The climb re-sculpts every muscle, of body, of mind, of spirit. You can't stretch upward and stay the same shape. At high places, noise fades. The The gossip, the competition, the constant proving they can't survive here. You notice how quiet it gets when you rise? That's not emptiness, that's clarity. You start to hear your own breath, your own thoughts. You realize that peace was never at the top of a mountain. Peace was the mountain. Every step upward carved a new silence inside you. But altitude can be lonely. Sometimes you'll look down and see the lights of where you came from, flickering like memories. You'll wonder if you should descend just to feel company again. Don't. The view is worth the quiet. From up here, you see patterns the valley could never reveal. The purpose behind detours, the reason some doors stayed shut. What once felt like delay now looks like design. Chosen ones, understand this. People will interpret your climb through their own limitations. Some will say you forgot them, others will say you think you're better. Neither is true. You simply stopped needing air that was already thinning. Every level of growth has its own atmosphere. Staying too long where you've outgrown the air only makes you dizzy. It's not betrayal to leave the ground, it's survival. Think of pilots preparing for flight. They check pressure, fuel, balance, and direction. That's you now, checking your spirit before the next ascent. You can't carry everything. Weight matters at altitude. Old grudges, half-healed wounds, people who drain rather than build, each one is excess baggage. Release them, not from anger, but from wisdom. The higher you go, the lighter you travel. And yes, some will try to follow without training. They'll race toward your height, mistaking visibility for readiness. When the thin air hits, they'll gasp and turn bitter. Don't take it personally. Everyone has a natural elevation. You were meant for thin air because you learned how to breathe through pressure. That's the difference. Your lungs were shaped in storms. Altitude also changes your appetite. The higher you climb, the less you crave attention and the more you crave purpose. Praise feels hollow. Peace feels priceless. You begin to protect your energy like oxygen, measured, mindful, sacred. Every breath becomes intention. That's maturity disguised as stillness. Remember, chosen ones, the summit isn't about looking down, it's about seeing farther. Growth doesn't create superiority, it creates stewardship. You rise to gain perspective, not to rule. From here, compassion widens. You start wishing others their own climbs, knowing how much courage it takes. That's the quiet grace of altitude. You stop competing and start understanding. When people drift away, bless them. When conversations fade, let them. When invitations stop arriving, don't panic. Space at this level is necessary. It keeps your lungs clear. You don't owe explanations for breathing easy. And if the air ever feels too thin, even for you, pause. Inhale gratitude. Exhale pressure. Remember why you climbed. To see, to grow, to become. The journey was never about proving altitude. It was about discovering endurance. So walk steady, chosen ones. Keep your breathing calm. You're not above anyone. You're simply aligned with where your purpose can breathe. Those who are meant for this height will find their own pace and join you without forcing it. They thought the air would break you. Instead, it became your rhythm. Number 10. Chosen ones, your authenticity is your armor. They told you to tone it down, but the truth refuses to whisper. My dear chosen ones, listen carefully. In a world built on imitation, authenticity is rebellion. They tried to teach you camouflage, how to fit the room, how to mute your light so fragile eyes wouldn't flinch. But you were never designed for disguise. You were wired for raw truth. Every time you bent yourself into smaller shapes just to keep their comfort intact, your spirit ached. That ache wasn't weakness, it was warning. It was your soul saying, enough pretending. Chosen ones, you've spent seasons studying masks, the polite smiles, the forced laughs, the conversations that drained your voltage. You know what it feels like to perform safety in rooms that were never safe. But here's the revelation. Authenticity is your armor. The moment you stopped apologizing for who you are, the darts started bouncing off. Pretending made you porous. Truth makes you bulletproof. Think back. How many times did they tell you you're too intense, too deep, too much? Every "too" was code for "you're showing me what I can't handle in myself." They weren't rejecting you, they were resisting reflection. Authenticity exposes counterfeit energy. That's why the air changes when you enter the room. Your presence is a spotlight, and falsehoods can't hide under it for long. You learned the hard way that blending in costs more than standing out. Conforming drains the soul slowly. Every time you trimmed your truth to fit a smaller circle, you felt the cut. But the day you decided to walk in full color, the gray faded for good. Yes, some doors closed, but only the ones leading to cages. The open ones? They were waiting for the real you, not the version rehearsed for approval. Chosen ones, authenticity doesn't need applause, it needs alignment. Real recognizes real, and when you speak from your core, you attract others who breathe at that same frequency. That's why your circle shrank, but your peace expanded. That's why the quiet around you now feels clean. Pretend friendships dissolved, shallow alliances evaporated, and you discovered something radical. Solitude with self-respect is safer than crowds with masks. Let's talk about armor. Armor doesn't mean hardness, it means integrity. Steel bends before it breaks because it knows its composition. So do you. Your honesty is not cruelty. Your transparency is not arrogance. You're simply done negotiating your identity. The truth doesn't require translation, and authenticity never begs to be believed. When you live unfiltered, you force liars to flee and manipulators to malfunction. But here's the twist, chosen ones. Authenticity also costs. It demands shedding skin that once felt like home. It requires walking away from scripts you outgrew. It asks you to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. That's why it feels heavy at first. Armor always does until you grow into it. But once it fits, nothing can pierce it. Remember those moments when you tried to shrink your dreams to match their disbelief? When you dimmed your laughter because joy made others uncomfortable? When you hid your pain because vulnerability scared them? Those were rehearsals in disguise, lessons showing you what pretending steals. Authenticity restored what performance drained: clarity, energy, authority. Now when they say, "You've changed," smile softly. Because the truth is, you didn't change, you returned. You're not becoming someone new, you're remembering someone ancient. The version of you that existed before fear taught you to hide. That remembrance is holy ground. Walk it barefoot. And hear this clearly, chosen ones. Authenticity doesn't mean explaining yourself to everyone who misreads you. Some people will never see you accurately because their lenses are fogged with their own insecurity. Stop wasting oxygen defending your design. You are not a debate. You are a declaration. Let your life be the proof and your peace be the punctuation. They will talk, they will twist. They will wonder how you keep shining after exile. It's simple. The armor fits. Lies slide off you now. Manipulation can't hook what doesn't crave validation. When truth is your fabric, deceit can't stain it. That's why you walk lighter, talk clearer, breathe freer. That's why eyes follow you when you enter the room. The air senses authenticity before ears hear it. Chosen ones, authenticity also sharpens discernment. The more real you become, the easier it is to feel the counterfeit. You'll notice who flinches at your honesty, who laughs nervously when you speak plainly, who disappears when you stop playing roles. Don't chase them, thank them. Every exit cleans the stage for the genuine to arrive. Think of authenticity as spiritual gravity. It pulls the right souls and repels the wrong ones without you lifting a finger. That's divine efficiency. You no longer need to network for validation. Your vibration does the talking. You no longer chase opportunities. Alignment introduces you. That's what happens when you move in truth. The universe rearranges to meet you halfway. And yes, being authentic will isolate you at first. But isolation for the honest is safer than applause for the fake. Eventually, the world that once mocked you will quote you. The same voices that called you too real will study your steadiness. Why? Because authenticity ages well. Trends expire, facades crumble, but truth endures. The chosen understand this. They build legacies, not illusions. So wear your authenticity boldly. Let your words come unpolished but pure. Let your heart speak louder than your brand. Let your peace outshine performance. The armor doesn't clank. It hums quietly, made from the metal of self-respect and the leather of lived experience. When you walk in that, arrows don't stick. They simply announce their failure. They said honesty would make you lonely. But chosen ones know the lonely road is just the narrow gate to freedom. Walk it with your head high, chosen ones. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs your exact frequency. And when the noise rises again, remember, you don't fight for authenticity. You fight from it. Because once truth becomes your armor, you don't fear the battlefield. You define it. So, my dear chosen ones, if these words hit home, if you've felt the fire of truth burning beneath your skin and you're done dimming it for the comfort of others, then this is your moment. Declare it right now in the comments. My authenticity is my armor. Let the whole circle know you're walking unfiltered, unafraid, and unapologetic. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this with another chosen soul who's ready to stop performing and start living raw. Remember, every time you stand in truth, you become a mirror for someone still hiding. Let's flood this feed with real ones, chosen ones, because the world doesn't need perfect, it needs pure. Number 11. Chosen ones, divine timing never misses. They said you were late, but heaven said you were right on schedule. My dear chosen ones, lean in, because this truth will settle every restless thought you've ever carried. The world told you that you missed your chance. They pointed to the calendar, the clock, the years that felt wasted, and they laughed. But the divine doesn't read the same clock you do. What looks delayed to man is right on time to destiny. Every closed door, every slow season, every painful pause, none of it was a mistake. Divine timing never misses, and you, chosen one, were never behind. Understand this. The chosen walk by appointment, not by accident. Your steps were measured before your first breath. Every "not yet" you've heard wasn't denial, it was protection. The detours you cursed were the map rerouting you away from destruction. You wanted arrival, but heaven wanted alignment, and alignment always takes longer than arrival because it's building something that will last. Chosen ones, think about it. Why does impatience hit hardest when breakthrough is near? Because the enemy knows delay breeds doubt. If he can make you question the timeline, he can make you forfeit the promise. But you didn't quit. You waited. You pressed through the silence, even when faith felt foolish. You kept showing up when nothing was moving. That's why you're still standing. Patience didn't weaken you. It weaponized you. They told you to hurry up. They mocked your pace. They didn't understand that divine timing is a symphony, not a stopwatch. You weren't stuck. You were being tuned. Every note, every test, every tear was adjusting your frequency so that when the right door opened, you'd walk through ready, not reckless. That's why some opportunities slipped through your hands. They weren't meant to survive the version of you that hadn't yet matured. And here's the mystery of divine timing. It often disguises itself as delay, so only the faithful remain. Crowds can follow miracles, but only the chosen can wait through silence. That's what separates you. Your patience exposed who was truly aligned and who was merely nearby. When you refused to rush, you revealed your roots. Shallow plants can't wait for rain. They need constant watering. But your roots dug deep into faith. And now, chosen ones, you draw strength from underground wells no drought can touch. Do you see the pattern now? Every missed moment was a mercy. The relationship that didn't last, the job that slipped away, the door that wouldn't open, all of it was divine editing. Heaven doesn't waste rejection. It repurposes it. You cried over what you lost, not realizing it was making room for what fit. Timing is not just about when, it's about what and who. The wrong thing at the right time is still wrong, and the right thing at the wrong time can destroy you. Divine timing threads both together until they click, like a lock meeting its key. Chosen ones, remember the seasons that tested your patience, the long nights, the prayers that echoed back unanswered. You thought God was silent, but he was scheduling. You thought nothing was happening, but foundations were being poured under your feet. Builders don't start with walls, they start with structure. That's what divine timing does. It builds what eyes can't yet see. You see, divine timing never rushes because it's not competing. The world races, the divine orchestrates, while others sprint to be seen. Chosen ones move when signaled. That's why your rise seems sudden to them, but not to you. You've been training for years in unseen fields, rehearsing obedience while they rehearsed performance. When your season hits, it will look effortless, but only because it was prepared. Let's make it plain. You didn't miss your window, chosen ones. Your window was under construction. The frame had to fit your weight. Heaven wasn't ignoring your prayers, it was expanding your capacity. The delay didn't deny you, it developed you. Waiting taught you what rushing never could: discernment, gratitude, endurance. Now, when opportunity knocks, you won't treat it like validation, you'll treat it like stewardship. And here's the proof. What's meant for you keeps circling back. The ideas you couldn't shake, the passions that refused to die, the dreams that survived disappointment, those weren't random, they're reminders. Divine timing loops what belongs to you until you're ready to receive it. You can't miss what's tethered to your name. So breathe, chosen ones. Release the timeline the world handed you. You are not late, you are layered. You are not waiting, you are ripening. The caterpillar doesn't rush the cocoon. The moon doesn't apologize for phases. Everything holy moves in rhythm, not panic. You are part of that rhythm. When people say, "It took you long enough," smile. They don't understand the value of a seasoned spirit. Quick success is easy. Sustained purpose is sacred. Divine timing builds sustainability. It ensures you won't crumble under what you prayed for. You won't just arrive, you'll remain. And for those who left because you weren't moving fast enough, bless them. Their impatience was their exit. Chosen ones can't be rushed by spectators who've never built anything sacred. Your pace is divine. Your process is protected. When your moment unfolds, it will make sense why every delay had to happen exactly as it did. So hold steady. Keep tending the ground that looks quiet. Keep trusting the schedule heaven wrote before time began. Every wait you endured is now turning into watch. Divine timing doesn't miss, it synchronizes. The same clock that held you back is about to release you forward. They thought the clock was against you, but chosen ones don't race clocks, they command seasons. Walk with confidence. You are not behind, you are aligned. Every second of waiting was holy, and when the appointed hour strikes, chosen ones, even the ones who doubted you will have to admit, it was never late, it was perfectly timed. And so, chosen ones, let this sink in. Every reaction, every whisper, every glare they throw your way isn't an accident. It's the evidence that you did something right, and now they're stunned by the strength you carry. Their shock isn't your burden, it's your confirmation. So hold your ground, wear your crown, and keep walking like the proof you already are. If these words hit home, smash that like button, subscribe for more truth, and drop the number 77 in the comments to stamp your power. Share this with another chosen soul. Let them wake up too.